What would British people call a corner?
Be like a rab scrabble or something.
Yeah, bird diddly do.
Bird diddly do.
The Remedy name has been around since 2008, but the bike has evolved a lot over those years. And for 2019, Trek has introduced an all-new Remedy with some important changes in the suspension and geometry departments. Now it's still got 150 millimeters out back and 160 millimeters up front. It's rolling on 27.5-inch wheels, but it's definitely more of a long leg trail bike than anything else. There's actually room for a 2.8-inch wide tire, and the bike comes stock with 2.6s. I would argue that you wouldn't want 2.8s on a bike like this, but hey, you can put them on there if you want. So let's get to the numbers that actually matter though. Up front, Trek has taken off half a degree of the head angle, so it sits at 65.5 in the slackest setting. Now you could steepen that up by half a degree by flipping the middle link around if you wanted to do that. Now another number that matters is the seat tube angle, and that's gotten steeper by a full degree. Now when Trek introduced the Remedy in 2008, they also introduced their active braking pivot, or ABP for short, and that's still used on the back of the Remedy. Now what it is a pivot that rotates concentrically around the rear axle. One thing that hasn't been carried over though for 2019 is the full floater. All previous Remedy designs, the shock was actually floating, it was mounted on the rocker link, and it was mounted on a short extension that came off the front of the chainstays. They've gone back to a more traditional setup now where the shock is mounted solidly to the front triangle. Trek says they did this because, guess what? It makes for a stiffer frame, just like the straight shot down tube. So you could see while the frame visually looks the same or very similar, there's some touches here, and a big focus of Trek's has been on frame rigidity. The shock itself is actually from RockShox, but it's using Penske's reactive valve. You can read about that. And it's a through shaft design that eliminates an internal floating piston that would usually separate the gas and the oil. Now, when you eliminate the IFP, you eliminate a seal, and it's supposed to make for a more active ride. So we'll see how that plays out. Up front, there's a Fox 36. It has the new Grip 2 cartridge that's 4-way adjustable high-speed compression and rebound and low-speed compression and rebound. Just in case it wasn't obvious, this bike's 9.9 designation means that it sits at the top of the family. That means that it also comes with a hefty price tag, $6,999. So that amount of money gets you a set of carbon wheels from Bontrager. That's Trek's house brand, but they've been impressive wheels, and an XO1 drivetrain. All that adds up to 29.1 pounds without pedals. 2019 Remedy, 150 mil in the back, 160 mil up front. This thing climbs exceptionally well for what it is.
You stay on top of the travel, and it likes to go uphill just as well as it does like to go down.
I would agree, especially compared to some of the other 150 bikes on the market, like the new Bronson. This is a far more nimble and easy to ride package when you're faced with something really technical, tight corners, that kind of thing.
You know, getting into more tight and more technical trails, it was pretty easy to get up and negotiate and get the bike exactly where you wanted. Rather than just plowing through lines and plowing up roots and rocks, you could kind of pick and choose the way you went up the trail. You
know, it's got 27.5 wheels, and I'm partial to 29, for sure, I'll admit that. So I didn't really expect it to be an amazing climber, but it is, especially for what it is. You know, if you're faced with a lot of technical climbing and you enjoy it, this is your bike. So you get to the top, you gotta come back down. Now, like I said before, this is not an enduro race bike, but it's definitely something that rewards someone who is precise, someone who picks their line choice, someone who maybe isn't all about just all-out speed through the roughest things.
Right, but that doesn't mean that it won't go fast. I think for a rider that's light on the bike and chooses their lines well, this bike's really not going to hold them back. While the trail was incredibly slick, the bike was really easy to get online and keep online.
But I think one of the things that does help the Remedy is the suspension. It has that through shaft reactive RockShox shock in the back, and the new Fox 36 with the grip damper up front, the new Grip 2 damper. And I think that's a big plus for this bike. It's ultra adjustable, and that fork is very good.
Yeah, it's one of the best forks out there right now, and it surely shows. I mean, the spec on this bike is pretty dialed altogether.
Yeah. I also want to give a shout out to the rear shock, which the bike doesn't seem like it eats up nearly as much travel as previous versions. They definitely had a bit of a rep for going a little deep, and I never got that impression from this bike, and I was impressed with the tires. Also, the carbon rims too.
Yeah, carbon rims and the handlebar.
Yeah, dropper post too. Dropper post works just fine.
Some of the pros that we saw on this bike were certainly the house branded components. It's light, it's nimble, it really likes to play going down the trail, and it climbs impressively well.
Yeah, and tying into the climbing performance, I think this is one of the few 150mm bikes that I would be happy to do huge days on. The bike is fun to throw around, and I could see myself being comfortable on it for many hours. So the one thing that I didn't quite get along with, or didn't get along with at all, is the knock block. The fork crown will hit it if you crash and it comes around. So there's a stop in the headset. Now I actually came up against that stop a couple times on technical climbs. It didn't keep me from making the section, but it does make you feel tippy. I love technical climbing and very technical trails, and I don't think I can gel with a knock block. I think it's silly, and I would rather just have a normal down tube. The bike was stiff enough before. I rode all the previous versions, it was fine. Ditch the knock block.
There was a time when the 150mm Remedy would be considered a enduro bike, but times have changed. We've got other bikes for that, like the Slash, and now I'll consider it a long-legged trail bike, and it's really good at doing what it does.
Yeah, I would agree, exactly. It's a very well-rounded, versatile trail bike with 150mm rear wheel travel. So stay tuned for more videos and more bikes from Pinkbike Field Test.